Welcome to the screencast Writing a Literature Review. This is part 4 of 4, Critiquing the Literature. Here are the learning outcomes for part 4 of Writing a Literature Review. By the end of this presentation, you should be able to critique the literature in your literature review and know what to look for in critiquing a research paper. And here's what we're going to do in this short screencast in part 4. We'll first discuss the importance of critiquing in a literature review. Then we'll look at ways to find information to help you critique the literature. And finally, we'll look at some sample paragraphs that critique the literature. But first, let's discuss the importance of critiquing. Why is it important to critique the literature? Well, your literature review demonstrates how the literature you discuss supports the choices you have made about your study. So in this way, your review exposes gaps, shortcomings, inconsistencies, and debates in the literature. And it also shows how the gaps or shortcomings led to your own research questions and research method. So in this way, your literature review critiques the literature. It doesn't merely describe the literature. So because your literature review should critique the literature, you have to do a special kind of reading for a literature review. You have to do active and critical reading. You cannot be passive when you read in preparation for a literature review. So what should you look for when you're reading critically? First of all, you should look for the main argument or conclusion in a paper. And then you should figure out if the author has looked at other perspectives, counter-arguments, and counter-evidence that don't perhaps fit with his or her conclusion. And then you should consider if the argument builds on the ideas or theories of others. Can you see a scaffolding in the research paper that you're critiquing? And then look closely at the methodology. Is it appropriate? Is it sufficient for addressing the research questions or objectives? And then look equally closely at the evidence. Determine if it supports the conclusion or main argument. How about bias? Could this author possibly be biased in some way? Could there be a conflict of interest? Perhaps he or she is doing work for a company that is supporting the research in the article, for example. Then consider if this article contributes to the knowledge, advances the knowledge in the field. And then think about how it relates to other articles in the field. And in part 2 of the screencast Writing a Literature Review, we looked at how to do a chart that makes it easier to show what the relationships are among articles, among papers. So where do you look for the information? Where can you find information to help you critique? Well, you can find the information in particular parts of a paper. First of all, the introduction and literature review sections of the paper you're critiquing should indicate the gap in the research that the author is attempting to fill and the shortcomings of existing research. Then in the results and discussion conclusion sections, look for the author's main conclusion. Usually in the discussion conclusion section, you'll find comparisons with other people's results. And you'll also find a discussion of limitations of the current research. So that would be a good place to look. And then you can go beyond the actual research paper. Look for reviews of the research paper or general review papers that review many papers in the field. And look for critiques of the article, of the paper. And then you can look at research papers and literature reviews of other authors. So what have other authors said about this author's paper? So you want to look for competing perspectives, alternative causal claims, counter-arguments, and especially critiques. How have other authors critiqued this paper, the work of this author? And here I have a sample paragraph. This is from a research article on written corrective feedback, whether written corrective feedback helps ESL students become more effective writers. So I'm going to read it and listen to the criticism of existing research contained in the paragraph. A number of studies have claimed that corrective feedback on ESL student writing is effective. However, the design of very few has included a control group, so it has not been possible to make a comparison between those who do and those who do not receive corrective feedback. Studies that fail to compare the effects of corrective feedback and no corrective feedback do not provide evidence of the effectiveness of corrective feedback. Of those that have made the comparison, 3 claim that corrective feedback had a positive effect on accuracy, but in each case, there were design issues that need to be taken into account when considering the value of their claims. So you can see how this author has critiqued existing literature because they had design issues, either a lack of a control group or some other issue with the design. So this is the kind of critique that you want to make in your literature review of existing literature. Now here is another example. This is a student paragraph that critiques the literature. Although Caldwell has proposed an interesting model of Aboriginal education, she provides little evidence to back up her claim that schools have ruined community life on reserves. Scholars have pointed out that, far from ruining community life, schools in fact bring communities together by teaching students units that are based on life in their region. Others have drawn attention to the many schools that now collaborate with community elders to teach and demonstrate Indigenous knowledge. By ignoring this evidence of positive change, Caldwell has not presented a complete picture of Aboriginal education. In contrast to the previous passage, which critiqued a body of literature, this is a critique of a single study that shows you what you can do. And this one, the last one, was critiquing the design, research design. This one's critiquing lack of or evidence and saying that there isn't enough evidence to make the claim that this particular author is making. So to summarize then, part 4 of writing a literature review. A literature review should do more than review or describe the literature. It should also critique it. And critiquing a research article involves active, critical reading. You can find information to help you critique in particular parts of research papers. And you can also find information in reviews and in research papers and literature reviews of other authors. So that brings me to the end of the screencast on writing a literature review.